Welcome to Mile High Reefers. I'm Scott Anderson, and this is one of the older YouTube channels out there that focuses on the reef aquarium hobby. I've been doing this since 2012, hard to believe. So today, I decided to do a live stream because, well, honestly, I don't want you guys to get caught with your pants down again like we did with Hawaii. We've got a looming Indo ban that really could hit us. So if there's coral from Indonesia that you want, now might be the time to go pick it up. So I put this one out as a timed live stream. So it started at 4:30. So everybody who's really interested in this should be in chat. Please put your comments in the comments column and I will address everything I possibly can. So let's kind of get into it. If you guys didn't see it, Reef Builders put an article out today. I have it linked down below. Jake does an amazing job with this kind of stuff. I'm not trying to take his credit. In fact, I am trying to spread the word. So that's why I'm saying it's linked down below. Read the article. So kind of here's what's happening. Indonesia, about 10 years ago, made a deal with the collectors that they would go full mariculture by 2021. Well, that's this year. Now, part of the deal was that they'd give until 2021, but of course, we lost Indonesia for 2 years, as I'm sure all of you remember. It was pretty horrible for the entire hobby. So this time, we're not losing all of Indonesia. We only have the potential, and right now it is only potential that we could lose wild collected Indonesian corals. So these are the corals that they actually go out to the ocean and take off of wild reefs. So mariculture appears to still be intact. So this is something I've been hearing about for a while, and Indo's been really weird with the way they've kind of done their bans. So I'm going to kind of talk about what happened last time, at least to my understanding of it. And maybe that'll give us some idea of what's happening and what to look for going forwards. So in the last ban, it happened right around 2018. And sorry, just saw a funny comment. Anyways, last ban happened around 2018 and lasted till about 2020. They banned everything. All coral exports out of Indonesia were gone. We couldn't get anything. I was actually selling wholesale at the time of the ban. I had imported Indo coral. I loved Indo coral, and then I lost it. It was a devastating blow. So it took us 2 years to get it back. It was a lot of fighting between the internal fighting within the Indo government. It was between different sectors and everything else. Honestly, I don't know Indonesian politics and don't claim to know it. But we finally got it back. When it came back online, it was supposed to be mariculture only, and and they could sell off the last of the wild collected that they still had on the rocks out there. So, the stuff that's on the racks, they could sell all that off. But we got this stuff for months. Who knows how much they had? There were rumors that people were skating the rules. So it took a while, but then we got full wild collection back, I don't know, 6 months or so. And it's been amazing. So since Indo's come back, I made it a point to pick up an acanthophilia from Indonesia. That is a coral I personally wanted. And it was ridiculously expensive. When Indo came back online, prices were like 3 times what they were previously. Honestly, if there's coral out there you want right now, I wouldn't wait because prices are probably going to go up. And that's part of why we're talking about this kind of stuff right now. And here's the other problem with the ban we had last time. So that 2 years we were down, there was some smuggling out of Indonesia that was happening. So what was happening was people were collecting coral and then smuggling it to Malaysia. And then they were shipping those coral out with Malaysian CITES. I was offered these corals. I flat out turned them down. I wanted nothing to do with these corals. And honestly, this is what scares me about what we have going forwards with coral production out of Indonesia, right? So when we stopped collecting last time, they didn't stop collecting. And that was a major problem getting wild collection going again. So part of the problem we were having was the Indonesian government didn't really want to give it back because people were smuggling coral out of the country. It's kind of a big deal. So that's one of my big fears going forwards, is that we will lose wild collected and we're going to screw up mariculture. Now, wild collection is the loss of wild collection is a bad thing for the hobby in general. We're going to lose those corals that are slow growing that we as hobbyists really love. So your Canthophylias, those big green bubbles like I have that you all want, the Trachyphyllias, elegance. Personally, I don't do the Indo ones. I'd go Aussie on those. The Indo ones die too easy. But, those big, solid LPS corals, even like some of the Indo scullies, stuff like that, we can lose those corals. They're not good candidates for mariculture yet. But we're going to get into a little more of that in a minute because I have a lot of hope here. I just hope that we don't have some bad eggs that screw this up for us. So last time, we had people smuggling it out of Indonesia. This time, the CITES will exist. I don't know how the CITES are going to work for the mariculture. Obviously, I don't think anybody knows yet because none of this has actually happened. So anything we're talking about today is just inferring. Like, nothing's done yet. They are still shipping coral out of Indonesia using 2020 CITES. That's fantastic. Now, eventually those CITES run out and we need new CITES issued. If those CITES do not get issued, we're done. That's it. No more coral out of Indonesia. We've seen this happen in other countries before. Vietnam went down for a little while because of CITES issues. Because they couldn't, the country wouldn't issue CITES, exports out of Vietnam stopped for 3 or 4 months because of the CITES issues. They got the CITES fixed and we were fine. So honestly, I think mariculture is the future of this hobby. I think it's probably easier. It provides jobs for people. It's more environmentally friendly in a lot of ways. So I think it's the future of the hobby. So this isn't necessarily a bad thing. And if it's done smartly, I think we have some pretty good options, right? So if we mariculture, we have to get our coral from somewhere to mariculture. You need that initial brood stock. Fortunately, they've been collecting corals for decades. So hopefully they have some really cool corals stashed aside, and hopefully they're collecting them right now. And if anybody from Indonesia is watching me that's an actual coral collector, like, get as many as you can, set them to the side. We want this brood stock. So we're really looking for all those weird and rare corals, and those are the kinds of things we're going to lose, right? The weird, the rare, and then the stuff that's hard to frag, like your big single polyp LPS. So those are the ones that I'm personally afraid of. The weird, the rare, and the big single polyp LPS. Now, it's relatively cheap to mariculture, right? I mean, they just put racks in the ocean. In the ocean, the sun does most of the work. Yes, they have to monitor them. Yes, they have to take care of pests and all of that, but it's relatively cheap. So I have hope that through mariculture, we can even grow those acanthophilias I like, except instead of a coral growing out in months, it's going to grow out in years, and the business models are going to have to support that. So if it takes years, those corals are going to have prices that reflect years of growth. All right. So a lot of our LPS aren't as fraggable as we'd like them to be. Cynarinas, acanthophilias, scolemia, all of these corals that we all know and love that fetch these eye-watering prices. The best acanthophilias, rumor has it, have sold for over 10 grand for the best rainbows, eye-watering prices. But it is common to walk into a store and see a high-end acanthophilia over $1,000. These are super high-end dream corals for most of us. I have a nice acanthophilia. I don't have the dream acanthophilia. It's an insane price difference. But mariculture, right? It's a possibility. And I thought about this as soon as I saw the article. You guys got to be watching Reef Builders, right? They've been doing the reef stock at home. Yeah. Remember, articles linked down below for what we're talking about today. But if you watched the reef stock at home a couple of months ago, where they had Shane Danger Coleman out of Australia on, he was showing us his little frags of Cynarina. Cynarina is one of those corals that we haven't really been able to frag. At least not successfully, but Shane's got good access to them, and he's really knows what he's doing. So he's got lots of little frags of Cynarina, and he says his success rate is high. So the techniques to frag Cynarina, now Cynarina is closely related to acanthophilia and scolemia. So we have a real shot that those corals can actually be maricultured. So we're not down and out yet when it comes to those insane corals. So mariculture may be what we're looking for from Indonesia. That being said, if there are corals that you really want, now's the time. One of the corals that I really wanted was kind of that red and almost white acanthophilia. I had one in my hand on the last shipment from Indo. The problem is I did not know that was the last shipment coming out of Indonesia. I sold it. And I never saw another coral like that again while I sold wholesale. And that's just it. Today is the day to start looking for those rare Indo corals that you really want that you may not be able to get. So that's what we're doing today. We're talking about the future of the hobby. I think long-term, mariculture is going to be good for us. I really like mariculture, and in many ways, I like it over aquaculture. Mariculture is really cool because we're growing the coral in the ocean. It's really eco-friendly, assuming we're not destroying reefs to do this. But we can grow the coral on racks, we can put them on the racks, and the only real input they need is sunlight. And somebody could come check it for pests, make sure a crown of thorns doesn't crawl across it or something. It's a really pretty sustainable in the way it's done. So mariculture can work for a long time as long as we maintain the reefs around it, right? If we can't do mariculture if the reef itself crashes. But mariculture makes so much sense to me, right? These people in Indonesia, they need the work. They have the coral right there. And we want their coral, and they can produce it at a relatively low cost and really environmentally friendly. Remember, when we aquaculture, it's environmentally friendly in the fact that we aren't taking them out of the ocean. We're not taking any resources from the ocean. But aquaculture is a really resource intensive, right? We're running big lights, we're running heaters, we're doing water changes, we're doing pumps, we're doing in tanks. The human work is a lot. So it's not real eco-friendly in that sense. Honestly, I would love to see a study where they see the actual energy input and the environmental friendliness of mariculture compared to aquaculture. So the big cost energy-wise and environmentally is that shipping the coral from Indonesia to the United States. Normal times, it's not actually that big of a deal because they're shipping them on planes in the cargo holds that are flying back and forth from Indonesia to their destination anyway. So these are planes that are traveling anyways. So the extra fuel used because they're shipping coral isn't that great. And it's the same deal when that plane lands and has to be shipped to the new customer, right? Whether it's a wholesaler or potentially a customer. Now, once it reaches FedEx or somebody like that, it's a little different. But even then, we're shipping packages all over the world anyway, so it's not like it's huge at that point. I personally think when it comes to the environment, mariculture is going to be ideal. And then you combine that with what Shane's doing in Australia, fragging Sinarina, and I would think this would apply to acanthophilia and most large polyp stony corals. I think we have a real shot at having a positive future coming out of Indonesia. It sounds bad. What I would love to see is some sort of collection permit that the Indonesian government would offer so that people could collect to get those brood stocks, right? You go pull a couple amazing acanthophilias off the reef, cut them up and grow them out. And, we'll get them. They'll be tiny, but we'll get them. So this is the kind of stuff we have to look at as this hobby goes forwards. Wild collection is going to get harder and harder as time goes by. At least that does appear to be the trend. So I'm optimistic. All right. I'm going to start reading the comments. If you guys have questions, let me know. All right. Palm Tree, I have soccer practice, so I won't see the live stream. Could you please make this video and not delete the live stream? Absolutely. That will happen. Algae Warrior, I started reading the Reef Builders article, but couldn't finish it. It's worth the read. I really do think he does a great job. Will's Aquarium. Hello. Okay. Not sure what that one's about. All right. Like acanthophilia corals like that. Acanthos are amazing corals. Ridiculously expensive for high end, but you can get some really insanely nice green ones at, prices average people can afford, in the hundreds of dollars, not the thousands of dollars. So look for those. Acanthophilia are relatively easy and amazing corals. And now's the time, guys. Indo has the best. I love my Aussie acanthos. They're nice, but I never saw an acanthophilia coming out of Australia while I was doing wholesale that looked anywhere near as good as the stuff coming out of Indonesia. Now, we can pull corals from different areas, but, colors and strains and stuff like that are regional. So we got to watch that. That's going to be a big deal for us. All right. Reef and Chill, what's up? Algae Warrior, no carbon footprint. Yes. So that carbon footprint's a big deal. Like, we're reefers. We want our reefs to live. We're pretty hypocritical if we don't do what it takes to keep our carbon footprint low. So if Mariculture has the lower carbon footprint, I'm all for it. I love that idea. Let's let science rule this, right? And no, I don't mean just shut it down and do studies like Hawaii did. Hello, that's not how science works. Wayne Miller, I can't watch all of this in the UK as we got work in the morning. Can you make this video so I can watch it tomorrow? Absolutely. Yeah, that's one thing I love about this channel is it's global. That's kind of why I hit these earlier ones. This one I set for 4:30 in the United States. It puts this about 6:30 on the East Coast. You know, it's hard finding a good global time. Seems like it's a different time everywhere. So those are my huge concerns when it comes to this ban. Feel free, if you guys want to talk about wild corals or the ban or anything else, to put it over in the chat, and I will answer those comments. But now on to some more fun stuff. So I got to go check out a company yesterday called Hydrospace, and they're a bacteria company. I know, right? Sounds so boring, but it's not. Bacteria is amazing. Bacteria is the reason our tanks live. Without it, they would all die. I love it. So years ago, we were looking at, 3 or 4 years ago, I saw an article where they were talking about feeding corals bacteria, like corals eat bacteria. Now, this blew my mind. At the time, I didn't know corals ate bacteria. I knew they ate planktons, you know, your phytoplanktons, your zooplanktons, all of that. And if you look at most of the common foods in the hobby, they're those. What we're missing in coral diets, it looks like, is bacteria. Now, this kind of makes sense, right? Because there are so many filter feeding corals that we can't keep, like non-photosynthetic gorgonians and your dendronephthias and all of these just insane non-photosynthetic corals. Now, everybody kind of thought it was due to the fact that we just couldn't get enough food up to them. But after starting to see articles online talking about us not having the food, I got real interested in this. And it just so happened Hydrospace hit me up and asked me if I'd be interested in coming out and checking out their product. And they're in Longmont, Colorado, so it's like 40 minutes away from my house. So I'm trying it, and I have my fingers crossed that this could be a game changer. If it is a game changer, I'm really interested in going doing a non-photosynthetic tank. I really want to look at opening up these doors for these corals I've never been able to keep. I mean, I've always imagined this dream tank of non-photosynthetic corals and flashlight fish. So I don't know if you guys see this room. It's kind of a basement room, but I got a bed over there to sleep down here because I work night shifts half the time. And I really can't put a reef tank down here because the lights have to be on a schedule or anything. A non-photosynthetic tank in this room would be awesome. And the only downside would be there'd be a little extra noise during this kind of stuff. I have a feeling you guys would rather have a little extra noise. And I start learning about non-photosynthetic tanks. So this has really got my wheels turning. Like, the stony dendros we keep in regular reef tanks, they're cool. We target feed them. They're amazing. I love them. They're fun. But, you know, they're usually closed up during the day, and they're not that pretty when they're closed up. And then you need to target feed them. And it's a lot of extra work for a coral that's closed during the day, which makes it hard to target feed, right? But if we can broadcast spawn bacteria and start keeping filter feeders alive, and and I'm not saying just the bacteria, we're going to give them a full diet, but we might be one step closer to cracking that egg. So that video is coming up, and I'm not going to go too much into the bacteria right now and how it works, because I got somebody to do it way better than I can. So that video will be out next week. I worked on it today. I'm really excited by this stuff. So I kind of want to know what you guys think of non-photosynthetic. So put those in the comments, in chat. I want to know what you guys think about non-photosynthetic, because it sounds amazing. So let's get back to the comments. Hello from Sri Lanka. Hello, Sri Lanka. Oh, I just envy where you're at. Diving in the water, checking out those purple tangs. Many ornamental marine fish are exported from Sri Lanka to the U.S., such as cleaner shrimp, rose bubble tip anemone, yellow wrasses, bicolor blennies, etc. Yes, they are. So it is weird. Sri Lanka is a big fish exporter. Everybody thinks of Red Sea as where all the purple tangs from. Sri Lanka is a big exporter of purple tangs. They're not only from Sri Lanka. Us coral guys tend to forget about Sri Lanka a lot because they don't ship coral. But like you said, they do invertebrates. Invertebrates are weird. They're classified different under the CITES and stuff. So a lot of times we'll get anemones and stuff like that from countries where we can't collect coral. It's just a difference in the way it's set up. It's really interesting. Vietnam only does soft corals and anemones. I'm not really sure how and why they make the designations the way they do. All right, simply reefing. So are we willing to wait and see if CITES will be renewed in March? Well, as hobbyists, I don't think we have a whole heck of a lot we can do. We have no influence with the Indonesian government, and probably not the best way to do it anyways. It's really it's an Indonesian deal. They got to figure it out. And that's part of why I'm making this stream, because like, if there's coral you want, buy it. Our time's running out. Like, if you want that Indo-acanthophilia, now's the time. If you don't, then wait. I'm hopeful that they all get renewed. But like I said, when Indo came back, first thing I did was pick up an acanthophilia from Indonesia, because I didn't know how long they were going to be around. Indonesia has been real flaky on coral collection. They're kind of up and down what they'll allow out. They've been flaky on. I mean, the mariculture stuff I'm talking up because I'm hopeful for it. I want to have the best attitude, but Indo's flaky. They might take that away from us as well. So that is a problem. Okay, what do you personally think the hardest coral to keep is? It's going to be the non-photosynthetic filter feeders. My dream coral is Dendronepthia. It's on, this is the coral you see on like an Attenborough documentary. He'll take you down and you'll be diving around the reef and you see these amazing soft corals just waving amongst all of the hard stony corals. And we haven't been able to keep them. Nobody can keep Dendronepthia as far as I know. There's some people who've had some shorter term success with them. I don't know of anybody who's kept one for over a year. It's insanely hard to keep. Obviously, there's so many corals out there that we don't even begin to get. There's some deep water, non-photosynthetic stuff that lives in high pressures and all that kind of stuff. But in the hobby, it's going to be like those Dendronepthias and those Gorgonians, all of those corals that take specialized feeding. And that's really why I'm so interested in this bacterial product. Because if we're missing a food, we can fix that. But let's talk more about Dendronepthia. And part of why I'm so interested in this is you see this coral and it's be growing near surface, bright sunlight, living amongst like photosynthetic corals. It's clearly in a low nutrient environment, because if it was a high nutrient environment, it would be growing algae everywhere. Light, right? I mean, if we have a lot of light and we have a lot of nutrients, algae is going to grow. But if we're not seeing that, it's got to be getting something else. So it's definitely getting the particulates. But yeah, Dendronepthia is something I'm incredibly interested in. And yeah, and so he said, other than NPS. Okay, I see that now. Geez, there's a ton. For me, it's Acropora. I got a couple that I keep alive, but I kill a lot of them. Now there's I don't know. There's nothing photosynthetic that I'm just scared of. Like, I don't think it can be kept. Things that just bug me are like Indo elegans. They just die so much easier than the Aussie ones. So those are always concerns I have. Yeah, when it comes to elegance, I would just buy Aussie. Don't even bother with the Indo. Adam H. Hello, everyone. How are you? How's it going? I have a pH that's approaching 8.5 quickly. Any ideas? Are you dosing like a Bowling method or something? Because a lot of times your alkalinity will be pushed up by that alkalinity. Your dosing of alkalinity will push your pH up. So that wouldn't surprise me. Or if you're doing like a calc reactor or something like that, those tend to be what push it up that high. 8.5 doesn't seem scary to me. 8, a lot of people are charging like 8.3. And theoretically, corals should grow better in higher pH. Obviously, there's going to be a limit to all of this, but it would make sense to me. And then people have done studies on this, and they do grow better in higher pH, but I haven't really looked into it. And personally, I don't watch my pH that closely. But high pH is usually not a bad thing. I wouldn't be too worried. And if you're dosing a Bowling method, it's probably something like that. All right. Unfortunately, coral exports from Sri Lanka since many years ago. But what I feel, even for Indonesia, is that rather than an export ban, the best solution is to regulate them. Yes. So the problem with regulation that I'm concerned about is people breaking the law with it. I am so afraid that they're going to get a ban, that they're going to ban collection. Then people are going to say they're mariculturing stuff that they're collecting. They'll just bring it in off the boat, slap a frag plug to it, ship it out as mariculture, and ruin the entire industry. The reason I'm afraid of this is because people were doing that. That's part of the problem with mariculture. That's why we have to have the regulations. It needs to be set in stone what mariculture is, and it has to be monitored because people were skirting the regulations. Mariculture is not gluing a frag plug to a coral like some companies were doing. So that's my biggest fear. All right, simply reefing. I have one of those carnation corals that I am trying my hands. Wish me luck. Oh man, I want to know how you do. I have it linked down below. Hydrospace's bacteria is down there if you want to try it. I'm personally trying it on my own tank. I see no reason it could possibly hurt your tank, and I only see reasons that it can improve it. And you know me, I'm not a snake oil salesman. I'm not the guy out there pushing the ginger cure to cure ick or something like that. I'm the guy who really wishes he was a scientist. I'm not a scientist, but I love science. All right. Thanks for responding. No dosing, outdoor tank, so very little ambient CO2. Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense. When we all have our tanks inside the house, and we get CO2 buildup, which pulls down CO2 levels. So if you're outdoors, you're probably have an easier time keeping those pH up because you don't have the same problems of indoor CO2. I mean, houses, you got people living in them, they're breathing, you've got animals, you've got furnaces running, CO2 is produced. You actually have what sounds like an ideal CO2 situation. All right. Do LPS Gorgonia need to be fed? I have an Australian Gorgonian that is looking lovely in 1-month-old tank. The seller was very skeptical on giving it to me. LOL. Okay. 2 types of Gorgonians out there. I'm going to guess if it's Aussie, what you probably have is non-photosynthetic. Most of the Caribbean stuff we bring in is photosynthetic. I believe there are some photosynthetic gorgs coming out of the Pacific, but I'm not real familiar with what those would be. Most of the ones I'm familiar with are the non-photosynthetic, and those guys absolutely have to be fed. They will not live long-term without food. I would definitely broadcast feed. And so that's the exact type of coral that I am personally so interested in keeping. That's why I'm really excited about bacteria potentially being like the new coral source, the new coral food source, because that's really what I've always been wanting, is that food that can crack the code so that I can have my flashlights swimming around in my reef tank. It sounds amazing. All right. Are you aware of any other plastic material other than acrylic for DIY overflow weir? I am not, and I have a feeling you are probably not wanting to do it because of cost. I don't see any reason an overflow weir would have to be made out of plastic. If you're any good at cutting glass, or if you got a local glass shop you like, you can make it out of glass. Acrylic's a great material and probably your best bet. When it comes to tanks, I would probably stick with glass or acrylic. All right. Let's see. I can't get higher than 8.1 despite outdoor air into the skimmer. Yeah, and so it's interesting that we're having that kind of 8.5 issue because for the most part, all of us want our pHs to go up. I'm sure I run a calcium reactor. I'm sure mine's below 8. I mean, us calcium reactor guys have been running like high 7s for a long time. I kind of want what you have. I've had tons of people tell me to run the line to my skimmer. I should probably do that. That's great advice. All right. Let's see. Adam H. It's definitely light sensitive. Extends best in darker areas. Hope we can have more advancements to non-photosynthetic. Okay. Interesting. Expands best in the darker areas. So it's light sensitive. It's probably opening up more at night. I would be interested to know that. If it's more of that kind of blue, purple, white color, it's probably non-photosynthetic. And when I'm talking about it, it'll be pretty obvious. Just Google the difference where your photosynthetic look more like the kind of pinkish brown ones like I have in my tank that are tall, like you see on a Caribbean reef. Those big, strong, straight ones. They're amazing corals, very inexpensive to purchase, very easy. Like Gorgonians are great. I don't know if I'd want a tank full of them, but they're a fantastic coral. Photosynthetic ones I will recommend to anybody. They're an easy coral. Non-photosynthetic I would only recommend to the most advanced hobbyists. And I'm talking like I would do pounds of research personally before purchasing one. And that's part of what this live stream is about. I was really excited by bacteria. All right. Setting up 180 gallon for SPS dominant next month. That is so awesome. Oh man, SPS dominant, probably acros. That sounds so much fun to me. All right. It's hard to find a nearby place to get laser cut or even find acrylic shoots. I know exactly what you're saying. We do have, in my area, we have some nearby places that will cut it for you. Acrylic's expensive, so I know exactly what you're going through. I've tried some personal projects like that, and some were expensive and some I tried myself that didn't go so well. Okay, I'll tell you guys a horrible, horrible story, okay? It's embarrassing, but I'm going to tell you about it. All right. So back in the old days of the 29-gallon tank, I read a book about people using real shallow tanks to grow zoanthids in that, they'd run a line through and they'd run the raceway through it. And I'm like, yeah, I could do that. So I went and bought some acrylic and I siliconed it together. It's not how you do acrylic. I siliconed it together and then it all held together. It was small. I mean, it ran off my 29-gallon tank. And in fact, it lived on that shelf right there that you can see in the background. I had it set up next to the tank. It lived there. It worked great. I ran to the store. While I was at the store, I got a call from my renter in the basement. At the time, I rented out my basement to get some extra income. They were asking me why water was leaking out of the light socket. Yep, when I got home, that tank that I had siliconed together had broken, and my pump was pumping the water out of the tank into their light socket. Yep. So it is worth doing it right, or you're going to end up like me doing stupid stuff. All right, what else do we got? Ellen Brown, I just picked up a Durasa clam, 2.5 inches. Is it okay to direct feed daily a mixture of Reef Energy AB plus Nios, phytoplankton, and Reef Chili Reef Roids? Okay, your mix of foods look great. I don't see a lot of reason to worry too much about direct feeding a Durasa clam. I've personally kept them. I've never had real issues with Durasas. They do great. A Durasa is something I do more of the broadcast spawn with. So when I make my food up with my fish, I'll do this, 3-4 times a week. I'll put some Benepets or a different type of food in there, mix it up, and I'll put that in there, and it can filter it out. My Squamosa clam and my Durasa clam that I got rid of because it got too big, they were bulletproof clams. I never target fed them. There really wasn't any reason to. Even if I got lazy on feeding the tank, they just did great. So I would almost say you're probably going to run more of a risk of like getting too much food inside of him that he's got to kind of push the water through, because really he's a filter feeder. He's opening and closing. I'd let him bring that in slower. Me personally, I would broadcast feed. So just put it in the tank and let him suck it out of the tank. They're filter feeders. They're great at it. And they're also photosynthetic, which is why they can filter feed and photosynthesize, which is why they're so awesome. They have 2 nutrient sources. All right. At Valhalla, the well-known reef guy in my area swears by low alk, 7.5 and 8, disregards pH. I'm not sure why he's running his alk that low. I know I've ran alk low, not intentionally, and I never get the colors out of most of my corals. I've had a couple of corals. For some reason, my crazy tea seems to look better under lower alk. I don't know if that's just coincidence or what. Alan Brown, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Oh, you are awesome. Okay. I like Benepets. Just made the switch to the also frozen Calneris, a good-sized food. Yeah. Those are both great foods. Benepets is great. One thing I like about Benepets is they've put the bacteria in. I think what we're going to find out is our corals eat so many different foods. And even though we're like at the point where we all know we have to feed our coral and we got to target feed them, I think we're going to find out that it's like nutrition, right? I have a feeling this is kind of like if an alien came to Earth 20,000 years ago and took somebody living more of a native lifestyle and took them into space and then tried to figure out what they ate and only fed them meat. We'd probably be missing some nutritional factors, right? We're omnivores. We're supposed to have a variety of foods. And I have a feeling that's how our corals are, right? They've evolved in these environments that have many different particulates, and it'd be odd if they only stuck to a few different types. I have a feeling they're interested in a lot of different things, and they need a lot of different stuff to complete their full nutritional values. All right. At Dino can always try eBay for scrap acrylic. Just make sure it's cell cast acrylic. It just cuts much easier and better. That sounds like great advice. I'm not an acrylic builder, but that sounds like fantastic advice. Well, thank you guys for all joining me on this live stream. Hopefully the Indo ban doesn't happen, and hopefully we continue to see our wild collected corals out of there. My prediction, at the very least, we're going to see a stop in wild collection shortly. But if I was really to put money on it, I think it's gone. That's my bet. I think long-term, as hobbyists, we have to move towards mariculture and aquaculture. My biggest concern with mariculture is I don't know if the governments of the world are going to get behind it. Even though, to me personally, it seems like the more ecologically friendly way to do it. Hopefully there's science to back that up. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for watching this live stream, and I'll see you on the next one. Check out My Dad Sucks at Fortnite, the channel I'm doing with my son Ian, and check out the bacteria video that's dropping next week from Hydra, where we test out the Hydrospace bacteria. It is going to be cool. All right, guys. See you later.